If you've ever wondered how to take a succulent leaf like this and propagate it into something like this, keep watching. And even better when you can get it for free. It's Friday afternoon. I'm just about to head into the grocery store to pick up a few things for dinner. And one thing about my grocery store, it's in a kind of a strip mall that are pretty common here in California where I live. And there's some kind of drought tolerant landscaping as part of the strip mall. One of which is kind of a bench planter next to some of the shops that is full of ghosty succulents. And this is a spot I always go and I check because being part of a bench, a lot of times people sit on these succulents and the leaves fall off. So it's always full of broken leaves and no one is keeping those leaves to save for themselves. I've even talked to the shop owners. There's a pet shop right next to the bench and I've asked them if they sort of maintain it and if they mind if I take the broken leaves, and they looked at me sort of incredulously like, why would they care? So I often go and check to see if there's any broken leaves. So let's go and see if there's anything there today. Here is the planter in question. You see it's full of little ghosty plants. It is looking pretty tidy. There isn't a lot of broken things, but there are a few broken leaves. You'll notice, and I want to emphasize this, I'm not breaking leaves. I am simply looking for leaves that are already broken. If you're breaking something, that is completely different. Even look, oh, if you take a look underneath, there's a leaf that has already started growing a little pup. So in addition to my shopping, got all of these, and these can easily be propagated into new succulents. I am in no doubt that some people are going to go and say in the comments that this is stealing. That is totally your opinion. We can agree to disagree. As I mentioned, I did talk to the shop owners. They certainly did not mind me picking up a few broken leaves. In fact, I think they almost saw it as I was helping clean up the place. And as mentioned, this is a sort of a strip mall, so even though I suppose technically it's like private property because I'm sure there's some company that owned the place, it is a sort of public walkway. It's not a private garden that someone is maintaining and owning those plants. It is sort of a public space. Again, I'm sure this will upset some people, but I don't believe that there's anything wrong with this practice. I should also mention, if you don't have your own shopping center where it's easy to find these leaves, but you do have your own succulents, this is how easy it is to turn them into more succulents. If you have a succulent like this, you can see it's grown a lot of leaves, and instead of having this look with all these leaves, and you just want to keep the rosette, you can very simply take that leaf kind of with a strong grip and give it a twist, and it should come off like that without much damage. This is what you want, that kind of nice little dimpling. You don't want a broken, wet leaf, but something like this is perfect to propagate in the methods that I'm about to show you. And this is certainly one way to get a lot of new succulents for yourself when you have some to work with. Coming back to these succulents that I found at my shopping center, here are some of my methods for propagating them into new plants. It's now Sunday. I found these on a Friday afternoon and just left them out here in my outdoor propagation station in the shade, I must point out. So now my next step is to choose a method of propagation to get them to grow into full-on plants. As you can see, this one, well, the work is already done for us. It already started growing, and it looks like this one as well has a little pep already growing. This one does not look so good. I think I'm just gonna throw this away because this has already got some signs of rot. It's shriveled up. Usually the types of leaves that you want to choose for propagation are more full, thick, healthy. They have a little dimple where they were connected to the plant, and they don't have really signs of rot. That's not to say that something with damage won't propagate. It's just not as likely. And a lot of times people say that they have trouble propagating. So I also feel like I should mention that this is a numbers game, that not everything is going to propagate. You do have to be prepared that you might have some failures. Most succulents, not all, but a lot of succulents are pretty cool plants in the sense that they can propagate themselves just from a dropped leaf. And this is pretty common, that they drop leaves on their own and they start to grow little pups. Eventually, these pups will root. These pups use the water and nutrition that is in these kind of chunky succulent leaves to sustain them. Eventually, they'll grow roots and they'll start to get their sustenance from the soil in the roots, and the leaf will shrivel up and they will become their own little plant. But I know some people find it quite difficult to get their propagations to work. So hopefully there will be some method here that will help get some plants for you from your succulent leaves. These are what's known as ghost succulents. I believe that's probably from their kind of creamy coloring that they have on top. They go very kind of greenish when left in the shade. They'll turn more orangey pink if left in the sunlight. Their scientific name, I know I'm going to murder this. I believe it's graptopetalatum paraguyanese. Apologies to any botanists out there. I know that I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly. But they are a very easy succulent to propagate from leaf. One of the main things about propagating succulent leaves is they should never be left in direct sunlight. That is just a recipe for disaster. They will get sunburned, they will shrivel up. A lot of times if you leave them in the sun, they'll kind of turn black and hard like this. It's just not good. They should be left in the shade, or as some of us like to call it, bright indirect light. So I'm outdoors, you can see there's some very bright light over there. I leave them here in the shade. We are in Southern California. It is August, so today is really quite hot. If you put these in direct sunlight, they would cook. But it is still very warm. While succulents are very resilient, most of them cannot withstand heavy frost. If you're in an area that gets colder in the night, you might want to do this indoors. You just want to make sure there's no frost, but also not too much heat. You want a kind of a happy medium. So my first method I'm going to share is quite simply the soil method. And this is when you just place the leaves upright on a bit of soil. I have a little bit of loamy soil. This is in a little tiny nursery pot. There is drainage. That is important. And I'm going to use 2 leaves because this one has already sprouted a pup. I'm going to just leave it, and you just leave it there. You don't want to bury the leaves. I have seen some people do this kind of thing. You don't want to do that. You literally lay it on the leaf flat. The roots will start to come out, and the pup will, similar to this one, they will just start to move upright. It doesn't really matter which way you put it. If you put it this way or this way, the plant should be able to figure out roots go down, pup goes up. I just usually put them this way as just a habit. It certainly doesn't have to be like that. And another thing to mention is if you find a leaf like this that has a pup already on it, as long as that leaf is not completely dry, keep the leaf on there. That leaf is sustaining this pup. It's giving it its moisture and nutrients ahead of it growing roots and getting the nutrients and moisture from the soil. Once you have your leaves in soil, you can give them a little bit of a spray to encourage rooting. You don't have to. I don't always, but misting is a good method once they are on soil, so long, again, as you have drainage. You don't want them to be sitting in this wetness. You're going to want to make sure that that kind of drains through. This is making me a little nervous because it is a bit damp, but that will eventually dry up. So that is one way to encourage rooting. The second method I'm going to talk about is water propagation. Now, the risk here, of course, with any water propagation of any kind of plant is water propagations are more susceptible to rot. And as we know, succulents are very susceptible to rot. There are a few methods to make this work a little bit better, and I will show you what I usually would do in this situation. I've got this little bud vase. I've filled the water up pretty high, and obviously I don't want to just stick this in here. You know, you could probably rest it like that. Again, I feel like that is a recipe for disaster. So what I'm going to use is I have some plastic wrap. I am going to place it over this vase, get it nice and tight. So, and then I'm going to kind of cut a little hole so that these are resting just above the water. I've got this little snipper. I'm just going to make the tiniest cut, and you can see there might be a little bit too much water in there because there is. So made a little small cut. I'm going to take my leaf. Now, looking at this, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to take these leaves. These were obviously a bud that got knocked off. I don't think they're going to grow into a bud. I think I'm better off twisting and making them into their own propagations. Let's see. I'm going to twist them very carefully off as I don't want to cause any damage. There we go. So I'm going to take my leaf, I'm going to find that little hole that I created, and I'm going to try to stick it through. Now, it's currently touching the water. I don't really want it to do that, so I'm going to lift it up, and I don't know if you can see, it is sort of touching the water a little bit, but not much. In fact, I think I'm going to drain a small bit of the water so that it's just moist in there. I don't really want that to be touching the water. Okay, so I emptied some of the water out, so it's not actually touching the water. If it was more like that, you can see it touches the water there. It's not touching the water. What will happen is it will start to grow roots, and the roots will go into the water, but the leaf itself is not in the water. And that is the key to helping prevent rot in this situation. So I'm going to actually put 3 leaves in this method. Like I said, there's always the probability that things won't work. So the more you put into propagation, the more likely you are to have success. So we're gonna set those aside over here where I have other propagations. Like I said, it's warm, it is in the shade, and I believe those will start to root. Another way to propagate succulents, and possibly my favorite way, is to do absolutely nothing at all. Let me show you. If you have a warm, shady spot, or even indoors on a windowsill, some place that's dry, you can just leave a leaf like this alone. You can see this one's already starting to grow. You could just leave this leaf alone and it will start to propagate as well. I'm going to put a couple more leaves on here to show you. We'll have a look and see if that works. If you've watched my videos before, you'll know this is what I call my dry propagation tray. This is a total mess because I need to go through it and check the health of some of these. But when I have a ton of leaves, like these ones I literally just pulled off earlier in the video, and I don't have enough room to put them in a pod, or I don't have enough propagation vessels, I'll just leave them here. And a lot of times they will just start to grow. It doesn't always work, but that's the same for any method. So this is just another method, especially if you're in a climate that is dry and warm and you have some shade. This is a great option for people like myself who don't have a lot of time, but you still want to grow some plants for free. And now my final method for propagation is known as the paper towel method. Personally, I don't usually use this method as I find it can take a lot of work, but you quite simply find some kind of a tray, you get a paper towel, and you soak it. This is just tap water. You get that towel nice and wet, and once it's soaked through, you very simply place your leaves with the kind of tip side onto the paper towel. They will, similar to the soil method or the water method, they will eventually start to root and grow little succulent pups. Why do I not use this method that much? Personally, I am just a little bit lazy. I'm a little bit more of a sit back plant parent. The dry method is more my style. I find it works just as effectively, but I know some people really like this method. It makes you forces you to pay attention to your plants. So you'll just have to make sure that this paper towel stays moist in order to encourage that root growth. If that paper towel dries after they've grown roots, I've found it does kind of stunt the growth. So that is why you do want to keep that paper towel moist. Okay, so I have my 4 methods of propagation going here, and we will check back in on them and see how they do. See if one method works better than others. It's not very scientific because all these leaves are slightly different, but we'll check it out and see how it goes.
1 week later.
It's been about a week, so let's check in on our propagations. So the soil propagations, you'll remember that one already had a little pup growing out of it. It is definitely gotten bigger. Let's see if it's rooted. Yeah, I can't, ooh. So it has little tiny roots kind of coming out. So that is a good sign. And place that back in there. The other leaf, no real progress there. I have this soil fairly dry, so I might give that a quick little spray. Here are the leaves that were put on the damp paper towel. It looks like one has got a little pup coming. Little tiny, that little pink stuff, those are the roots. Let's see if any other progress has been made. I just dampened this. No other progress. These leaves are a little bit damaged. I turned this upside down because I didn't want this damage to become rot. That's funny. It's like a little, what would have been a pup. And like I said, propagation is not 100% guaranteed, which is why the more you try, the more likely you are to have success. Onto our dry propagations. You can ignore these. These are from other plants. I just kind of put them in the same bowl. This tiny one, no progress. Look at that. I don't believe that had a little pup before. I'll have to go and double check, or if it did, it had a small one. So there's some roots and a pup growing there. And this tiny one, nothing happening there. Looks like a little bit damaged, so we might not see any growth from that one. Here are the water propagations. Let's take a look. Okay, there's definitely something going on here. No roots or no buds yet, but definitely there's some kind of growth happening in all 3 of them. Okay, so I'm gonna put them back in. Set them aside.
2 weeks later.
It's time to check back in on the propagations. Full disclosure, I have been away from home, so I have not been keeping on top of these at all, especially the paper towel propagations. That paper towel is supposed to remain wet. I would dampen it maybe once a week. It's been a while, but let's have a look and see what we're working with. So here's our dry propagations. These 3 leaves were just set here and ignored. There's been no water, no misting. It's been pretty hot and dry here. And as you can see, this one might have already had a little pup growing. I can't remember. There's a pup, and these 2 little tiny ones have roots growing. The soil propagation, this one, look at that. I mean, it's not a leaf anymore, it's a full-blown plant. Look, it hasn't even gone into the soil, but it's obviously looking to go into the soil, and its mother leaf is dried up. The other leaf, I'll move this out of the way so we can see. The other leaf does have roots going into the soil, and there is a little pup growing. So that one is a success. Here's the paper towel. I just wet it. Like I said, I have not really been here much to keep an eye on it. Yet we still have growth on all of them. Even this one that is a little bit damaged. You can see there's like a teeny tiny little pup growing there. So that method definitely works. It might have been even more successful had I kept that paper towel damp, but it works even if you forget about it. And then finally, we have our water propagation. So I can already see there's definitely some roots going on here. Oh, they're reaching down to the water. Okay, let's just take this off and see how they look. Okay, so with the water propagations, there are definitely roots on 2 of them. One looks like it may be a fail. There's not much going on there. And are there little pups there? So interestingly, there aren't little pups, but there's like little growths that maybe are going to turn into pups. But it's not the same kind of look as that. You can see some definitive little leaves on that one, whereas these just like kind of, sorry, my camera doesn't focus super close up, but there's definitely growths, but they're not leafy growths. So what's the takeaway here? I think for sure there is no surefire right or wrong way to propagate succulents from leaves. I think it's whatever method you're the most comfortable with. This certainly wasn't a scientific experiment. I know my favorite ways are the soil and just set it and forget it method, just because keeping a paper towel damp, it's a little bit of maintenance there. It just goes to show how easy it is to go and find succulent leaves for free and get a whole bunch of plants. Please feel free to ask me any questions in the comments. I'm happy to reply and answer where I can. Also, don't forget, I'm on other social media channels, so don't forget to check me out on Instagram and TikTok. And of course, subscribe.